all of that. Now come back to conflict. This is outside conflict. Now come back to conflict. A child is growing. He was just today with my mom and my dad, and tomorrow they are not there. And I have to fend for myself. What do you expect? He'll be angry with the government. He'll be angry with everybody. He'll be angry with it takes a village. He'll be angry with that whole village. And so it's the responsibility of the whole village to look at this child and don't blame the child for the things that they do. Rather look for the root and help the child out of it. But most of us get to blame these children and want to be aggressive back to the children.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Laura, because time is not on our side, but I want to ask this again as an add-on to that. Aside the children, coming back to the actors, what do you do to checkmate the mental fitness of humanitarian aid workers? It's very important, because you cannot be responding to someone in need while you yourself is not mentally fit. So what do you do with regards to that?
Thank you. That's also a very, very important thing that we always neglect as humanitarian workers. We work and work and work and don't check our stress levels. And we just feel sometimes it's just stress, and the stress will go on its own, but it doesn't go on its own. You need to check yourself. There's a checklist, I don't know, that you could use to help yourself, because sometimes you might not really have, most of you might not really have someone who will tell you, go to the hospital. You have to look, like they say, safety first. How do I take care of myself? So first of all, you take a pause at work. When you begin to notice that you're becoming, one of the signs of mental, some form of mental stress is aggressiveness. You're aggressive, or your eating habit begins to change, or you want to do everything on your own. You don't even want to accept help from another person. Those are some signs that you could look out for. Understand that, no, I think I need to take a step back. And it's not bad if you tell yourself, take a day off. That one day will not harm anybody, but it will rather help you to be able to give back more than you've been giving. It will help you to be more productive.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Noru. That's quite very interesting. It's good for us to know that you cannot give a full package of what is expected of you if you are not mentally and physically fit. So it's good we take care of our emotions and our mental fitness. Great. Now, talking about aid workers, it takes a village. And most of the aids we give have to do with the village. Now we just had the government returning the IDPs to their villages. So they are returning as returnees. Some of them are still in the camp, but some of them are going back to their residence, if not tampered with. Now, as a security analyst, I believe you are an expert in terms of security. Gathered here today, we have the government agencies representatives here with us. We have humanitarian actors here with us. We have members of the community. We have CSO members, CBO members. We have community development volunteers here with us today. What do you have to say with regards to the security? Put it, I don't know how to put it. With regards to security openness or security closeness with regards to humanitarian activities in the northeastern part of this country.
So thank you again for providing this platform. And perhaps I think this is quite an important conversation that we need to have across the board, security. We are very familiar with the context of the conflict in northeast Nigeria since the year 2009. We have observed that security and the conflict has taken on a series of trajectory. From where we had the internal unrest, up to the point where we have the local militia or the youths that are now designated as a vigilante task force coming together to push out these insurgents to the hinterlands and then subsequently into the deep bushes. The point where we begin to see evolution in counterinsurgency operations taking one form to the other, to the point where we then began to see a split in the factions of the insurgents, from what we used to centrally know as Boko Haram to what then became of ISWAP. ISWAP, Jazz, and Ansaru, who a lot of analysts believe are now domiciled in the Northeast, to then the point where we saw a significant change in the conflict with the death of Abubakar Shekau. And up to this point, where we now are beginning to witness series of mass surrenders from the conflict. So the trajectory of the conflict in northeast Nigeria is not an isolation of its own. If you look at the history of conflicts across the world, and with particular reference to African countries, you understand that insurgency evolves. It then begins to take one form to the other, and that is what we are witnessing here. However, is the time right to say that everything is in order? Perhaps no. But have we made significant progress as a nation? I like to believe we have. And I tell you why. Now we continue to see skirmishes of attempts of attacks on soft targets, on pockets of rural communities in most of these different locations, but also we have seen the Nigerian government record significant successes in counterinsurgency.
Please let's put our hands together for Nigeria as a country. Thank you.
And I think what is of particular interest in the context of this conversation we are having is to look at what the security within the Northeast context has now evolved to become.
Great.
You see, previously in the conflicts within this theater, we observed instances where non-state armed groups sack communities and abduct people in masses. In fact, at the point, it has also almost become a very regular occurrence. However, with the efforts of the state government, efforts of security institutions across the board, including the military, the police, the civil defense, and even what we like to call the volunteer security outfits, the CJTF, the vigilantes,
the hunters,
and the rest of them. There have been a sort of synergy that has now begun to record success not only on the kinetic operations that are ongoing in the Northeast, but also on the non-kinetic aspect of counterinsurgency operations. I'll give you an instance. In August 2001, when the mass surrender situation began,
2021 or 2001?
2021.
2021, yes.
I beg your pardon. In 2021, August, when the mass exit, and by mass exit I mean the mass surrender, began to actually manifest. We see instances of 200 Boko Haram surrendering from Bama, another 400 surrendering from Konduga, and the rest of it. Now we have a situation where the military is giving us an indication of about 70,000 insurgents who have already exited the conflict. 70,000. So by any imagination whatsoever, if you look at the depletion of a fighting force by 70,000 men, in any case, let me also clarify, the 70,000 is not a function of all of the combatants, because we also see these surrenders happen alongside combatants with their families, those who are forcibly conscripted into the conflict, the children who are given birth to in the forest, and the rest of them. But regardless, in any conflict context where you began to see upwards of 70,000 surrenders, then you would agree with me that that is quite a positive indication.
Thank you very much. Now, this point, as a security analyst, we witnessed at a point in time when people, based on the tradition of this town, would swear with the Holy Quran that they are not part of the opposite group, but eventually they still go on carrying out attacks. So the question now is this: do you believe in the recuperation of this repentance into the communities? How safe it is?
Well, you see, the issue of reconciliation and integration is a very sensitive and complex topic. And I, in all honesty, like to acknowledge the complexity and the sensitivity that comes with conversations around reconciliation and reintegration. However, because I also speak on behalf of UNDP, we have a project called the S2R project. S2R project. Strengthening support for reconciliation and reintegration of former non-state Boko Haram associates, non-state Boko Haram combatants and their associates. What the S2R project seeks to do is to promote reconciliation and reintegration at the community level. So you have the communities, the societies who are victims of the activities of the insurgents on one hand, being prepared to embrace the precepts of forgiveness, to embrace the significance of mutual cohabitation and peaceful coexistence. While we also have on the other part, because you see, it's a structural line thing. When you want to talk about reconciliation, you cannot present reconciliation while people are grieving. I have witnessed my family members being killed and slaughtered, and it's not fair. You just come out to me and tell me because you are a Muslim or because you are a Christian, you have to forgive and allow these people to come back. What then happens to the grievances that I have? Now, the approach of this project, unlike several other strategic interventions, which, of course, in partnership with UNICEF and our UNHCR colleagues and IAM, along with other strategic interventions that also aims to address the root causes of this conflict to an extent, and to also prepare ground for continuous cohabitation. There is the acknowledgement of reparations for victims. The prosecution process of our country, Nigeria, is also a complex one. For instance, the conventional criminal on the streets of Maiduguri who has been caught perpetrating act of crime, maybe a burglary or the sort of it, is being locked up in the police station. Imagine how long it takes for just that one individual to have a day in the court. And then before the prosecution is actually carried out, and then that person is convicted or otherwise. Now, the complexity of the judicial system across the board.
And in Nigeria as a country.
And even across the world.
Globally.
Yes, it's not a peculiarity. You see, prosecutions are expensive everywhere you go to in the world. Prosecutions are very expensive. And we have a lot of these victims who demand justice in one form or the other. But at the same time, you have a system where the more you encourage these returns, the more we continue to see people leaving the conflict and coming back into the township as repentance.
And it's a typo.
Well, that is also relative. And I'm going to touch on that very briefly. Acknowledge we have very limited time.
Yes.
The idea I'm trying to bring is to provide reparations for these victims. This is where the concept of transitional justice comes in. Transitional justice, or what we like to call restorative justice. The informal type of justice that we used to have before the formal justice system came in. Where we leverage on religious and traditional institutions across the board. Where, for instance, when there is a misunderstanding within the local community, the ulama is sufficient to address these issues. If the ulama is unable to address it, then it escalated to the next ladder of the traditional hierarchy. Yeah?
Until it gets to the emir or the sheikh and it should be resolved.
Now, it is this form of framework, the transitional justice framework, that is now being introduced to allow for these victims to seek some sort of closure, to get some sort of reparations. In Maiduguri, as of last week, there was a news that was making the round where the repentant Boko Haram members were clearing the gutters and sweeping the market.
I guess I saw that on social media.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that is
something behind forgive us, we have repented.
Exactly.
It's not something like that.
That is a form, that is some form of transitional justice mechanism where you might argue that that is not enough perhaps. But again, it begs the question of do we forgive or do we continue going around the vicious cycle of conflicts and persecution and attacks?
Yes, Mr. Usman, thank you for that. I actually deliberately allowed you because security is very vital to each and every one of us. As an actor, you do not go to the field without knowing how secured it is. So I allowed you, but time will not permit us to continue. I will still come back to you because we need actually, there's something we are lacking. We cannot be cutting a tree at the top without looking at the roots that are being fed by the rain that is falling. So if you don't look at the cause, the main cause of those things, whatever we do, I can categorically tell you, is not going to yield an output that will save each and every one of us. So thank you very much. What I've learned is, it's a synergy. The security is the synergy between all the actors, the policemen, the armed forces, the government agencies, the intergovernmental, non-governmental organizations, the traditional, everything. It affects everyone, and virtually everyone is a stakeholder, and we need to play our role. Thank you very much. I looked around and I saw some people taking notes of some things. That means what we are discussing here is very important. It takes a village. It takes a village to secure our nation. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to give a child hope. It takes a village to give the community hope. And it takes a village to restore peace. Mr. Tom, you are a risk education and non-technical survey specialist. Now, considering the fact that IDPs, internal displaced persons, have been returned to their various localities, villages, and we are aware of the fact that a lot has happened within the time frame they left their localities, and they stand the risk of coming in contact with explosive ordnance. What do you have to tell us as a specialist with experience in Nigeria, especially the northeastern part of the country, with regards to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Saidi, for this time, and thank you to fellow panelists, senior officers of the armed forces, ladies and gentlemen, protocol observed. Yes, in any armed conflict affected context, there is bound to be contamination of the environment with explosive ordinances. Based on my experience of working in different countries, such as Uganda, Afghanistan, and now in Nigeria, among others, when armed actors in the form of non-state armed groups have armed conflict with government forces, there is a situation of war. And where war happens, there is definitely contamination of the land. In general, let me say contamination of the environment that civilians live in. Now, this contamination can be in the form of landmines. It can also be in the form of improvised explosive devices, what is called IEDs, and also it could be in the form of
explosive remnants of war.
Exactly, that's what I was coming to.
ERWs,
yes, explosive remnants of wars. These are projectiles, for example, like mortars which you are fired.
Grenades, projectiles.
Exactly, and some of them do not explode where they land, so they pose a risk as well as a threat because they are hazardous objects that exist in the community. So, what we do as UNMAS is working with our partners such as MAC, DRC, and also the government in making sure that non-technical surveys are conducted to determine areas which are actually contaminated and also to assess areas which are suspected to be contaminated and, map them, and then we can make a recommendation on the technical clearance of these explosive ordinances. That is one strategy. The other strategy that we use is doing explosive ordnance risk education, which we are mainly focusing on at the moment in Nigeria, because the resources required for doing clearance of EODs in general, we do not have it at the moment. But of course, before I go deep...
So by extension, that means clearance is very expensive.
It's very expensive in terms of cost.
So for now, it's not an option.
Budget-wise, you have to plan for it and mobilize the required resources in order to be able to do it. But again, you cannot sit back and wait for that to happen. So that's why currently our focus is on explosive ordnance risk education and doing the non-technical surveys.
Great.
So let me also give a recap of how UNMAS got into Nigeria. It will be good for...
Please, it should be very helpful to each and one of us.
It will be very
You have our
fellow panelists and the invited guests to also know. So in the year 2018, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, normally abbreviated as RC, invited United Nations Mine Action Program to come to do the work it does in this armed conflict, this conflict-affected context of Nigeria. And we do very well know that the northeastern region is specifically the region in this country that is seriously affected by the impact of the armed conflict between the non-state armed groups as well as the government of the federal government of Nigeria. Now, when we came in, we found that some steps had been taken by the federal government of Nigeria. And one of the most important things that the government of this country did is by ratifying the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention. Now, any country that ratifies this convention has key activities it should do. It should develop policies to guide the activities under mine action programming. It should also establish a national mine action center. And the good news is, for this context of Nigeria, the location for establishment of the National Mine Action Center has been identified as Borno State. It's supposed to be established in Maiduguri, but we don't know why it's taking too long for this center to be staffed and also kept operational, because the center should be established, yes?
There should be a kind of budgetary allocation
Yes.
for the staffing, funding, operationalization of the center and keep it going.
Exactly, because when it comes to protection of citizens and their resources in a country, the primary responsibility lies with the government of that country.
Yes.
So, as UN agencies and humanitarian and development partners, we come in as partners to support, but the lead should be the national government, of course in collaboration with the state government.
That's right.
So that's an area that we are really working on.
Yes.
And calling upon those who have access to key decision makers such as...
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yes.
Yesterday we had the honor to welcome the president of this great country here in Maiduguri.
Yes.
And while I was going through the reports, he categorically mentioned explosive ordnance. He said, based on his experience, the post-Civil War experience showed him that there surely the presence of explosive ordnance whenever there is war. And he's aware of the reports of event that happened weeks ago in Burma, where some children went into scrap metal collection. About 10 of them at the spot, almost 8 of them lost their lives subsequently. So now he said that there's this committee he mentioned, and that he actually nominated the vice president to chair that committee. Now, he was requesting for a synergy between the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, and also that committee to take it up. Now, could this be a window for UNMAS to come in and advocate for the establishment of the National Mines Action Authority and the National Mines Action Center?
All right, thank you for the highlights you put to the cross. As UNMAS, we have been working with that committee that His Excellency the President
That's great.
about. It is called the Interministerial Committee, and the lead ministry is the Federal Ministry of Defense. What they are supposed to do is to advocate and support and push for the release of funds for the establishment and operationalization of this National Mine Action Center in Maiduguri. And based on recent communications, it was said that there was a push to release the funds to the state level from the federal level. Now, what we do not know as UNMAS is that has these funds been released or not yet from the federal to
the state.
to the state? And of course, this requires not only UNMAS,
A push, a synergy.
different actors to advocate and lobby so that the funds can leave the coffers of the government at federal level so that it reaches the state coffers, and then the actual establishment of the center, the staffing,
The operationalization.
and the daily operationalization.
Yes.
Yes. And the budget should be available.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tom.
And then hopefully, since we do know that explosive ordinances do not only exist in Bono, but they also, we normally call the most affected states as the Bay States.
Yes, Borno, Adamawa, Yobe.
Yeah, so we hope that the center will be here in Maiduguri, but then branches will be open in the other states.
Yes, I will still come back to you.
Yes.
Yes, because there is an extension of that discussion, considering what is happening recently in the northwestern part of the country, banditry, kidnapping, and exchange of stuff like that. We'll go back to you. Now, we've taken the education and safety of a child who is at the center of a village. It takes a village. And we've discussed the security implications, consequences of our activities in this village. And we went through looking at the mental fitness of the aid worker who is giving the humanitarian aid and the person, the beneficiary of the humanitarian aid. Now we've taken explosive ordnance, which is a great risk to the returnees. Now let me bring in Saadatu, who is from Center for Social Cohesion and Peace Empowerment, as a non-governmental organization that has its specific spelled out mandates. It takes a village. What can you tell us? What have you delivered? What do you intend delivering as an organization to make the village build up to be a peaceful community and a peaceful nation that each and every one of us will be proud of? Thank you, Sadatu.
Thank you, Abdul Ghaffar, for that question. So as an organization, what we do is, apart from advocating for peace, from the name CENSCOPE, you see social cohesion, peace and empowerment. So majorly what we do is around peace, but then we also have other sectors we engage in. So buttressing on our peace building mandate, what we do across communities is we identify community leaders, religious leaders, we have youth leaders, and for gender mainstreaming we have women leaders. And we also have security representatives like the civilian JTF. These people make up a set of committee. We call them the community leaders as a whole, where in each of our identified locations, we try as much as possible to train them, give them extensive training based on their community mechanisms. We don't bring in new things, no. We try to leverage on what they know, what they have been doing before. I know before the insurgencies, community leader in the community would have
engagements with this subordinates?
Apart from engagement, you have where when they have issues, they sit and then agree on the possible solution without going to the police, without
Just like what Mr. Usman mentioned.
Exactly.
Yes.
So this community leader would have the mandate of saying, you are wrong, you are right, or this is how we are going to resolve this issue, and you have a win-win situation. So leveraging on that, what we do is to train them more on it, because having people come in, leave their communities, some people are coming from other locations. When they come in, stay as IDPs, they are not identified as community leaders, they all become IDPs. But we try to fish them out, work on what they have, and then we assign them the responsibility of picking out crisis or conflict situations in their communities.
Now, Sadat, if I may come in there, now what you've mentioned, do we use it as a medium for advocacy towards restoring the position of and the roles and responsibilities of traditional and religious leaders in conflict resolution?
Yes, yes.
Good.
So when they bring up this conflict that are erupting in their communities, they sit within themselves, these demographics of people, and then agree on the best way to solve it. So we have a follow-up mechanism where an action point would be taken. When we come back next week, we ask them, how far with this? Were you able to achieve what you said you want to achieve?
Now,
and can we come in to support?
Yes, basically that's peace building, right?
That's
good. So we've had a link between your statement and what Usman mentioned. Now, is your organization very active with regards to the discussion Mr. Tom has made with explosive ordnance?
Yes.
What has the organization done? What is it doing? What does it intend to do?
So, like I said, apart from peace building, we have other sectors we are going into, and as an organization, what CENSCOPE has done on explosive ordnance, and we had, like he made mention, there are explosive remnants of war. There are landmines, probably landmines or other deadly things that are thrown away. Some can be in cans and people would not even know. Like he may mention those 10 boys that were affected last week in Burma. So what we do is to educate people on those risks. When you see something like that, try to call the attention of practitioners that know better about it. Not just for you to see a can and then touch it. Some people might tell you, I've seen a mortar that's like what we call in Hausa Tabaya. They wouldn't know it's a projectile. They wouldn't understand. They would just see.
So basically emphasizing on a explosive ordnance risk education. Risk education. That's great. The MC, the anchor is oriented. I thought we were just beginning the conversation. Because I can say everyone is being carried along. What we've been discussing is very vital to each and every one of us, and I could see the calmness of the house. But please permit me to just take one more round, and we hand over the microphone to you. Okay, thank you. Having taken that from you, Sadat, I'll come back to...
Just a moment. So, like I made mention, this is for the adults. I made mention that of the adults and the risk education, but then we don't leave out children. We have established a peace club in schools around communities we have selected, where these children not only have to play with each other to reduce stigmatization of host communities and IDPs. We try as much as possible to see that they are sensitized and become peace ambassadors from their grassroots level, from their baby stage. And like she made mention about the PSS sector, we also try to use art as a means of therapy for them, those that have been affected by conflict. So we try as much as possible to see that the children, the women, the adults, everyone is taken along in all our projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sadat. Mr. Anko, is that all we've got of time? Okay. Now, permit me at this juncture to summarize our discussion. It takes a village, and the central beneficiary of that village is that child that will grow tomorrow to become the founder of the community, the ruler and leader of the community, the child of preside over a country, that child that will be that active humanitarian, that child that will become the doctor in the hospital, that child that will become the driver that will be driving the humanitarian aid workers, that child that will become the ulama in the community, that child that will become the religious leader. Mr. Peter has just told us what UNICEF is doing. They've been doing a very wonderful job. UNICEF is not a non-governmental organization, but an intergovernmental organization trying to strengthen and also implementing policies, governmental policies. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your coming, and your discussion has added value to what we knew before coming to this engagement. Mr. Usman, who is a security analyst, has actually opened our eyes to what the government is doing, the activeness of our security institutions as a country, the activeness of the actors, main actors that are working with security. UNDP is there, UNDSS is there, the Nigerian forces, every actor. And he has also told us what they are doing in the cause of reconciliation, reintegration of the repentant NSAGs into the communities. Mr. Usman, thanks for having you in the house. And my Oga, Mr. Tom, we all know the threat explosive ordnance has posed to. During the course of one of the radio programs of CENSCOPE, a woman called to appreciate the program, and she said, a boy went out with his friend, they picked up a can of Maltina, brought it to the house. Unknown to them, it was an explosive ordnance. God was so kind, it exploded when there was no one around. So this will open our eyes to the risk at stake when we talk of explosive ordnance. Mr. Tom, we are grateful for the wonderful job you and UNMAS is doing, and trying to see to the realization, the establishment of National Mine Action Center and also National Mine Action Authority. Thank you for the wonderful job. We're grateful having you here. Thank you very much. Personally, I'm so much impressed having you in our midst. Mrs. Noro Paul is a psychosocial support officer.
Advisor.
You said?
Advisor.
Advisor. That's great. You've told us how important it is for us to take a break when we see the need for us to take a break. When they say, when you see something, say something. When you start receiving a signal from your body, your emotion has started changing. You're becoming aggressive as a humanitarian aid worker. You need to take a rest. You need to tell yourself that you need to see a therapist, a counselor. You need to work on your mental health so that you can have a full package delivery. Not just to the humanitarian aid workers, and also to that child. The activities that are being put in ground to look into the mental health of the children that are affected, and also everyone that is affected by the insurgency. Mrs. Noro, thank you for having you in this discussion. The last but not the least.
We'll wait down. Thank you very much.
Without my permission, I guess I'm the moderator. Yes. Miss Sadatu Injida, a program coordinator, project coordinator on the CENSCOPE. Thank you for sharing with us the wonderful work CENSCOPE is doing in the humanitarian sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I had wanted this to be all-inclusive, where audience would be given the chance to come in. But considering the fact that today is Friday, and the time frame we have, and also considering the fact that we started behind schedule, the anchor of the program has told me that my time is up. Once again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to have this wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Before you go, photographer, where are you? Please, let's have a group shot.
Now, so how, and you say you are doing explosive ordnance risk education in all of these communities. My question is, how safe is it to conduct the explosive ordnance risk education itself without the clearance? Thank you.
How safe it is to conduct a risk education, ordinances in education?
All right. Thank you for your question. based on available resources that we have at hand, we have to put it to the best use possible. That's why our focus currently is on explosive ordnance risk education, and then we are also doing non-technical surveying, capacity building. We are also doing what we call explosive ordnance devices disposal capacity building, especially for the Nigerian police force. Many of the officers have already received that EODD training. We are also supporting the federal government of Nigeria in terms of reporting in respect to the convention that they ratified. So one of our major focus is on working with not only international mine action programming actors such as MAG and DRC, but we have built capacity of a number of national NGOs. For example, CENSCOPE, there is CPEWI, there is LABDI, there is INEHAD, and a number of them. I remember very clearly they are totaling to 10. YAP is also one of them. So these NGOs whose capacity we have enhanced are going out to the various LGS to conduct EORE sessions. Now, they are able to do because they go to locations where other actors, humanitarian actors have been operating, and they don't conduct them in the bushes. For example, they conduct these EORE sessions within the IDPs camps, within the host communities. They use spaces that have already been confirmed, like a community training hall, a classroom, a child friendly safe space. These are locations that are not known to be contaminated. So they pass on the life-saving EORE messages to conflict-affected communities and the host communities as well as the returnees for them to get these messages in form of skills and be able to apply them for their own safety and also enhance behavior change to keep themselves safe from the evils that could be existing within the communities that they live in. Thank you. Hope I've been able to answer.
Thank you. So, thank you, sir. The last man, you can take your seat, sir. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this event. And before we go, we want to say a very big thank you. We'll be having a group photograph here, International Humanitarian Day. Before I invite Mr. Saidi for vote of thanks, and we'll prepare the stage for group picture. Yes, we'll do the national anthem, then the group picture immediately after the vote of thanks. So on behalf of myself, I say thank you for patiently joining on my bus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've done very well. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to maintain the established protocol, the sincere appreciations, gratitude to our Creator who has made it possible for us today to see the light of this day. Sincerely, I feel that CENSCOPE as an organization will send forth an invitation to reputable United Nations organizations, and we have them joining us. I think this has spoken a lot about the footprints CENSCOPE has made in the humanitarian sector. Having appreciated and extended my gratitude to God Almighty, I sincerely want to appreciate all the UN units, the United Nations Development Nation, the UNICEF, UNMAS, UNDSS, all the international organizations, national, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, community-based organizations, individuals, volunteers, everyone that has found it worthy to join us here today to commemorate the World Humanitarian Day in honor of that child in the village that grew up to be a humanitarian, who eventually, in the course of giving and delivering the responsibility upon him or her, lost his or her precious life. Indeed, today is a day worthy for every humanitarian to sit down and ask him or herself, at this point in time where I lose my life, what have I achieved as a humanitarian? At this point in time, if I lose my life, what value have I added to humanity? At this point in time, if I lose my life, have I discharged my responsibility? I want to say thank you. The thanks doesn't stop there. I also want to thank those humanitarians that lost their lives for the selfless services to humanity. Indeed, together we can achieve the success we want. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to carry out humanitarian activities. Once again, I would like to say thank you. Likewise, our security agencies and also the SDU, Special Duty Unit of the University of Maiduguri, who have been with us since the beginning of this program to the end, and also the management and staff of this wonderful and great hall. I would like to say on behalf of the Executive Director of CENSCOPE, thank you very much. The Executive Director is tendering his sincere apology because when we leave here after my prayer, we're going to join him in rejoicing. We have a new baby boy, and today is the naming ceremony, that's why he couldn't stay long with us. So, thank you on behalf of the Executive Director of CENSCOPE, thank you on behalf of CENSCOPE family, thank you on behalf of every child from the village that became eventually a humanitarian aid worker, and thank you for joining us in commemorating this day. Thank you all. Please, may we all rise for the national anthem. Where's DJ?